Welcome, everyone. My name is Skip Wiley, and today I have the extreme pleasure of talking about a topic that is very close to my heart, and that's veterans. And the reason why that's close to my heart is for 6 years, I was in the U.S. Marine Corps. You're never out of the Marine Corps. You're always a Marine for your entire life. And so I am honored today to talk about a topic that has a major impact on agents, no matter whether you're new, whether you have been in the business for 20 years. This is a topic that is critically important for 2024 and beyond. I read an article before this morning, and before I talk about that, I just want to welcome you to episode 17 of the 5-Year Real Estate Career Podcast. Today's topic is 10 steps to empower veterans on how to buy their first home, or their second home, or their third home, or their 23rd home. And we're going to talk about some of those details on today's call. Also, part of my job and the podcasters on this call, my fellow podcasters, Patrick and Eric, is to educate you about what we call the 5-year real estate career. Imagine, if you can, developing a real estate. Let's say you're brand new. Elvira's brand new in this business. Imagine developing a real estate career that in 5 short years will pay you abundantly for the rest of your life. Sounds impossible, sounds like hype, but let me assure you, it is absolutely not. There are hundreds, even 1,000 people that have currently developed that 5-year career. So welcome to the 5-Year Real Estate Career Podcast. We're a virtual seminar every time we air. And today's seminar is really important. In the next 30 minutes, if you're brand new to real estate, or if you've been in the real estate for a long time, I want you to think about, we're just going to, as an example, talk about the state of Florida, and we're going to talk about veterans in the state of Florida. I read yesterday that Florida is the second largest state in the country for the origination of VA loans. Over 40,000 mortgages, VA mortgages, were done in Florida in 2023. And so what we're going to do on this call, because that's a huge number. I also read that of all the mortgages done in the country last year, 65% of those mortgages were first-time home buyers. That's an amazing statistic. And since VA is the easiest way to become a first-time home buyer, this topic is very relevant for the rest of 2024, especially with the higher rates, because of major benefits. So we're going to, for those of you that don't know this, there are 5 different types of VA loans. VA loans are also not just for veterans. An active duty, someone who's been in the military for as little as 91 days can actually get a VA mortgage. This is something that a lot of people are not knowledgeable about, and that is that VA loans can also be used for somebody who is a surviving spouse of a veteran. They've never been in the military, but the spouse can actually get a mortgage. And last but not least, and probably singly the most important thing, VA doesn't mean they don't care about credit, but credit is not one of the high priorities. VA wants to help the veteran buy a property because they know how important it is to financial freedom in life. So with that as an introduction, I'm going to introduce you to one of my favorite people, and that is Eric and Patrick, both 2 of my favorites. And but the lead speaker for today's call is Eric Wilner, who's going to lead the conversation about how to use VA financing to become a real success in real estate in 2024. Eric?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're tuning in to us from. We do have a pretty exciting topic, and when we started looking at this topic was as we were getting close to Memorial Day, and I was thinking to myself, what more appropriate conversation would be to have a conversation about the benefits for our heroes. Uh, and so the VA loan is probably one of the biggest benefits that veterans have, and I would say that because it's also probably one of the most underutilized benefits because a lot of veterans don't understand what that is. Now, why it's also important is because for you as an agent out there, this is a huge opportunity. Number one, to qualify more people to help those that defend and lay it on the line for our country. And personally, I believe that if a person is willing to lay it on the line for this country, they ought to own a piece of this country as well, and all the benefits that come with it. So take advantage of today's podcast because I want you to think about how can you give back. It doesn't always mean being on the front lines when it comes to going overseas and so forth, but being on the front lines to welcome back the veterans and to help them and reward them for what they've done. So this is what we do. This is a very meaningful way that you can also contribute to it. And it's kind of interesting, when I ask people about some of the questions that Skip brought up, did you know that the VA loan doesn't use credit scores? The VA, okay, the Veterans Administration, does not set a credit score minimum. It's the lenders that are the conduits that want to see a credit score, but those can also be overcome with other compensating factors. So let's talk a little bit about the journey, right? And this is where we want to pick up and be a resource, right? We want to be that trusted advisor to veterans out there. And the first step is to educate our veterans about the benefits of home ownership, and that's a broad conversation, right? It's a one we should be having with everybody, but many may not realize that the VA loans offer no down payment requirements. If you were to boil down every single loan that exists out there, they all are based on three primary factors. Okay, you can reduce it to number one. Uh, Most lenders, well, the first thing they're going to ask is what is your credit score? Okay, and if you don't meet that minimum guideline, the conversation ends there. The second major criteria is the down payment, and again, most lenders, if you don't have a down payment, then they're going to basically turn it down. And the third is the income. So the fact that veterans don't have to have a down payment is a huge thing, right? That's one of the biggest barriers to home ownership. And now it's important to understand that no down payment doesn't mean no closing costs either. And that's what catches a lot of people by surprise. So as real estate professionals, we must be the guide, explaining the process. Tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly. Remember, they've seen a lot worse than this. So we want to have everyone be prepared, dispel the myths because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and help them to feel empowered about that, taking that next step to home ownership. So let's talk about, Skip mentioned do you know that there's five different, whenever you talk about a VA loan, most people think you're talking about one loan. There are actually five different varieties of the VA loan. Number one, there is the purchase loan, right? That's the zero down payment. Again, reemphasize there may be closing costs. You see, when you're a great realtor, you'll know that there's other places that you can draw a down payment from or closing costs from that will help your veteran. The other thing that's a big deal is PMI, right? Whenever you put less than 20% down, lenders generally charge private mortgage insurance, PMI. And with a Veterans Administration loan, a VA loan, there is no PMI, which, by the way, translates to lower payments. Also, did you know that VA loans carry lower interest rates than the typical market rates? And that's another big plus. And that's one of the reasons why, imagine watching a veteran buy a home, put 10% down, do the conventional financing, pay PMI when he didn't have to do those things. Okay. You could be the person that helps them realize that. Number two type of loan is a cash out refinance. If they can go up to 100%, they can also take cash out of a property if they already own it. So there is a refinance version of the VA loan. Then there's something, and this is a kind of a complicated name. It's called the IRRRL loan, right? And it's short for the interest rate reduction refinance loan, which is basically a very streamlined way for a VA loan to modify and lower the interest rate. Now, think about this conversation. Skip and Patrick, we hear this all the time. People saying, well, I'm waiting for interest rates to come down. Well, if there's anybody that should not wait for interest rates to do anything to buy a home, it's veterans. They ought to buy right now because 0 down, they got all the benefits that we've talked about so far. Plus, in the event that interest rates, if and when they do come down, they have something called the IRRRL loan, which allows them to take advantage of the lowest interest rates. And then, I'm sure you guys hear this all the time as well.
Yeah. Hey, I'd like to throw something in. I too am a veteran. So Skip, thank you for your service. I served in the U.S. Navy. I spent much of my time underwater as a deep sea diver. But I think it's important to note as well that VA loans are not all panacea either, right? When I was but a young E4 in the Navy, I purchased my first property. It was a townhouse in Virginia Beach, 1809 Secrest Court. I remember the address to this day. And the real estate agent, it was new construction, a little townhouse, $68,000, suggested I get a VA graduated payment, negative amortization, purchase loan, which I did because I didn't know what the hell that meant other than my first wife, one of two, and I could afford to buy a home, which we did. It turned out to be a bad decision for me. I was only in my duty station for 2 years. And because it was new construction, the prices were not going up dramatically. In fact, the builder lowered the prices. So I ended up selling my property back to the agent that sold it to me, ironically. Her husband was in the Navy, interestingly, and they assumed my mortgage and then did a refinance on it, obviously. But what I think is super important about this entire premise that we're talking about, and it really, I'm sorry for digressing, but everything that we talk about in these podcasts are little packets of great information. And whether you ever do a VA loan with a buyer or not, the fact that you can talk about it to the extent that we're sharing on this podcast is incredibly important because that can engage conversations with people that we're talking to at a bar, somebody that we might have an affinity relationship with or something. So this is really a great topic, and I'm glad we're talking about this one. So Eric, sorry. Yes.
I want to throw in something there as well. I mean, there are builders all over the country now that are advertising for veterans to buy with $1 down. That allows us to advertise for people who want to buy. We can, if they don't happen to be a veteran when they call us, we can explain to them that that's a VA transaction only, but it gets us connected with many more potential buyers out there who are looking and responded to a very creative ad. One other thing that I've been noticing a lot, there's a national company that is advertising day in and day out now about cash out refinances VA. They happen to be a company that specializes in VA loans. It's the only type of loan they do. And they're talking about paying off credit cards, paying off your automobile, and using, if you happen to have 24, 25, or 29% interest rate, there may be a reason to use VA for one of those other purposes that Eric talked about, which is cash out refinance. I caution you on that. Go make some more money and pay off rather than borrow more money, but it's available to a veteran.
Yeah, well, it's case by case, right? If consolidating lowers payments, this is where our value comes into play, is to be able to show, this is the pros and the cons of doing this. This is the pros and cons of not doing that. as a creative real estate investor, and I'm thinking about Patrick's story where the VA loan, and even though it was a graduated payment loan, which, you know, is a whole other topic all by itself,
They don't have it
it
anymore.
No.
got him into a property. And you
Yeah.
see, that's the thing, is it did get him into the property. And think about this, his realtor, who obviously was had veteran eligibility and needed a low down payment loan, was able to get into a property. Patrick was able to get out, and even though they went and turned around and refinanced it, it's that creative piece. And this is why we talk about in the 5-year career, we're trying to give you lots of different perspectives, lots of different angles to look at things, because, you know, it's not just a square box. And here's the thing, ultimately, you'll never be able to buy again at today's prices, right? Who can buy at the bottom of the you know, the Great Recession, when everyone was afraid of real estate? Man, knowing what you know now, would you love to buy a house back when the, you know? So this is why we keep saying, don't let people wait. You know, you can always refinance, you can always sell, you can always rent. There's so many different things, but there's nothing better than owning a property, and it's a life changer for most people. So
And
anyway,
let me
so
add
that was
one
the
more piece
third
to that.
type.
Oh,
Say it
hold
again?
on. One more piece to that puzzle. The really interesting piece of my story is that real estate purchase, although it was not a financial success in any way, shape, or form, is what got me into the real estate business.
Right.
After I got
So-
out of the Navy, I said to my ex-wife, that real estate agent made a quarter of what I make in a year killing myself. And she was sitting at a desk reading a magazine and handed me a key to make that money. I'm doing
Case in
that when I
point.
get out of the Navy. And it
Case
worked.
in point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, it's one of those things. It's you might not have realized it at the time, but in hindsight, it was a great lesson learned.
It was valuable.
So another VA loan. Now think about this, okay? There is a Native American direct loan, okay? These are for eligible Native American veterans that live on federal trust land. And what's interesting about that is that there's certain type of properties that are very difficult to finance, right? Because there's unknowns about it, there's restrictions about it. But understand that even on, you know, federal trust land, there is a VA loan for them. Another one, and if you think about how important this one is called the Adapted Housing Grant. And this is for injured or disabled veterans, right? Fortunately, they didn't pay the ultimate price, but they paid a huge price coming back with a disability and or an injury. And many communities offer disabled veterans property tax incentives up to 100% in some cases. In fact, you know, Patrick, you can add to this one again. I know that that imagine being able to get advantage financing, advantage taxes, again, making the American dream, which if anybody should get the American dream, it ought to be our veterans, but make the American dream of home ownership a reality.
Indeed. Yeah, my dad was a career Air Force guy, and he, although he could do everything fine, he had 100% disability based on him doing a really good job understanding the VA handbook and getting all of his boxes checked. While he paid no property taxes for the entire time that he owned homes, and that's a lot of money if you think about it, right? That's hundreds of
Absolutely.
dollars.
Imagine having that today, you know,
Yeah.
at the, you know, typically 1 to 2% of the property's value, depending on where you live.
Yep.
So number one is to educate yourselves, knowing all these different types of loans. Number two is being able to share that. And you know, as Skip was saying, there are agents out there who make a career just servicing veterans. So next step, let's simplify the VA loan process. Now we can do that in every loan process, but navigating the VA loan process can be intimidating because you got to remember that they're lay people or they're military people. They understand that, but they don't necessarily understand finances and, you know, and the ins and outs of credit. So our duty is to simplify it. And
But
that's
what if they're Marines? Is there a picture book with no words that we can use for them?
We put those in little symbols because, you know, Marines are notoriously not very smart.
Just kidding. I love Marines.
hoorah, hoorah. All in good fun. Well, we
Yeah.
break down the steps, and that's the bottom line. And even if we have to do it in hand signs for the Marines, we help veterans obtain, number one, very important. Probably everything starts with something called the Certificate of Eligibilities, the COE. Okay. And so the first thing that we all have to do is make sure, A, do they have one? Did they get one? Okay, because not every person gets one. Did they get one? And then and in fact, you might want to become familiar on how to obtain it, because if they can't find it, there, you can get another one. It's a
Mhm.
process. But then when you get that, that's where the process really can start. Now you can start connecting them with VA approved lenders, and again, by streamlining the process, making it simple for them, that's what makes home ownership accessible. Any comments on the I think it's what's it, the DD
214.
DD
14,
214.
right?
Yeah, if I just recently updated, I lost mine a long time ago. Actually, didn't use it ever for the longest time. But the reality is, all you have to do is go online, call VA. VA will walk you through the process. They
Yep.
make it really, really easy to do. They also tell you something that's significantly significant. Not all veterans have full 100% financing benefit, or if they have it, they may have a limited portion of it. And that was my case. I didn't have full benefits. I served at a time in the reserve and then in active duty, and the combination of the two didn't fully qualify me for a VA loan. So not all veterans are fully qualified, and the easiest way to determine it is just go to VA directly. I mean,
Yeah.
those guys are really, they'll bend over and really help you quickly determine what you're qualified for. And their goal is to get every veteran a mortgage loan so they can buy a house.
And let's be clear, they'll bend over backwards, Skip, because there's other things that can happen. But also important though, when I did sell my house to the other military person, my VA entitlement was used up, and that's something that is also part of checking into the eligibility, because you only get so much that you can borrow as a veteran, and if it's in use by another property, or if somebody's assumed that loan, that can also be an issue. I think it's important though, and Eric, where you're coming from is you are a lender, that as real estate professionals, we don't need to be experts on VA finance. The information that's covered in this podcast is almost sufficient, but you do want to have a lender that specializes in VA loans if you're going to work with veterans. One
Yeah.
off, find your person, but make sure it's the right group that understands everything about these programs, because it's not just a
Yeah,
slam.
and so to this conversation, number one is that you get that, that certificate of eligibility, and you can use it for a property, a primary residence, right? And that's general, but as in every rule, there's exceptions. Did you know that, number one, for example, if I use my VA eligibility and then I sell my house and repay the loan, it's renewed. So I have my VA eligibility all over again. So you can do this as many times. There's no limit as to how many times I can use my VA eligibility. I just can't use it all up, or once I use it all up, then either I have to sell it, pay it off, whatever the case may be, number one. But did you know that there's an exception in there as well? Do you know that I can buy, as a veteran, I can buy a second home? There's mileage and distance requirements, but there are exceptions. And your job isn't to know all the exceptions, to Patrick's point. That your job is to know that exceptions may exist and get with that expert that knows what's going on. So just important to know and PS, let's say you buy a home with a VA loan. Can you rent that home out? The answer is yes. Does that mean that you can go out and buy another one with VA eligibility? The answer would be no. Okay. Because until you free up that eligibility, it's tied up in that property. So that's something to make people aware of in that process. So let's talk
Eric,
about the appraisals. Okay. Appraisals play a crucial role in this. And so we want to, as we're advocating for our veterans, to advocate for fair valuations, making sure that the veterans' dream homes meet VA minimum property requirements. And they have just like FHA has their requirements, VA has their requirements, from heating systems to roofs. They have to be in certain good condition, meet certain safety requirements and so forth. So that's something also to be aware of. And that's, again, why you want to go with, build your team with those experts around you. And that's what I would say as an agent. It's not your job to know every single thing. We live in a world of specialization, and this is where having that perfect team around you makes a difference. Another area, credit counseling. I'm big, and I talk about that all the time, and I'm a big advocate that every credit can be fixed, okay? And so credit counseling, some veterans face credit challenges. They had other things, they had other worries, bigger priorities sometimes. And, everyone has problems with medical bills. We guide them toward good credit counseling services. We guide them to the resources that can help to restore their good credit and improve their credit score so they can meet, not the VA. Remember, VA doesn't care about credit score, but by the lender, we want to make sure. And again, remember I said, to every rule, there's some exceptions. And so if you have other compensating factors, right, then you might be able to overcome and make that dream of home ownership a reality. Just a few strategic steps can make a big, big difference.
Yep.
You wanted to add something?
No.
I do. I do. I want to go back to what you were talking about buying that first home. A lot of people don't realize you can buy a fourplex as a veteran.
Great point, Skip. Yeah.
And that is the quickest, easiest way to be a real estate investor. Buy a fourplex with VA, rent out the other three. Maybe you won't pay anything.
Live in one, important.
Yeah,
So
you have to live in one. You must live in it, but you don't have to live in it forever. You could live in it a year.
Well, to Skip's point, you can buy a 1 unit, right? A single family house, a duplex, live in one, rent out the other. So have someone pay half your mortgage payment or more. Buy a triplex, live in one, rent out two. Or to what Skip went right to the, he's going to maximize. He says, buy yourself up to a fourplex. And that's the point I wanted to make. Up to 4 units, live in one. And by now, with the other 3 making the payments, odds are the veteran didn't have a down payment. If he had a great agent, and Skip does this all the time, gets the closing costs paid for by the seller, and then he has the income, and now he has no down payment, no closing costs, and no income. Do you think your veteran will love you when you do that?
Yes.
The answer is yes. Do you
and
think
if
the veteran's going to introduce you,
Eric,
to more veterans?
Yeah, Eric, if he transfers, like I live in a city where there are 3 bases here, a lot of veterans, a lot of veteran buyers. So if he buys that fourplex and it cash flows and he moves to another city, he won't be able to use his VA, but he'll have his best real estate investment ever because of the fact that we negotiated. He bought that property with not a dime out of his pocket, maybe $1. Everybody can scrape up 100 pennies to buy that property. And the reality is that is a strategy that every veteran should know about, especially one who's buying their first property. A lot of people get scared about the concept of owning a fourplex, but it's the quickest, easiest way to be a smart home buyer and also to be a future quality investor.
That's a great topic for a podcast or a webinar, whether you're doing it to a community or through your employer groups, but exactly that, buying a 4-unit property, because it's still considered single family residential from the perspective of financing. FHA you can buy them with, you can use the rehab loans, VA, that's a tremendous topic. I love that.
You guys are talking my love language. You know that I'm big on investments and everything. And to Skip's point as well, if you get relocated, and let's say that's, a couple years down the line, well, there may be the equity in that fourplex. And if they've got an expert, I'll tell them, listen, why don't we refinance that first fourplex, free up your VA eligibility, and with 0 down, let's go do it again in your new station. So this is being a resource for your people. And I'm just telling you, you have a golden nugget with VA loans and a golden opportunity to help out what I think are the golden people of our country. So in the essence of time, let's pick up the pace a little bit here, because other things, when their eligibility isn't 100%, we talked about that. VA loans don't require down payments, but sometimes additional down payment assistance programs can come into play, and we can explore both local, state, federal, and even private down payment assistance programs. We have a podcast in our library just on that subject right there. And again, don't ignore that for our veterans. Finally, network with other veteran friendly realtors, right? Maybe in a different part of the country. There is a brotherhood amongst the people who service the veterans, because they have a sincere interest in helping the veterans, and it's a strong market. As I mentioned, you could easily focus on that and never do anything else.
There's a group, Eric, called VA Rep. It's Veterans Administration Real Estate Professionals, and it's all about that. Most of them are veterans. They serve veterans. It's worth joining. Inexpensive to be a member of that group, but they do all kinds of great stuff.
Excellent. So again, leverage technology for virtual tours, because having that veterans stationed overseas getting ready to relocate, being on the cutting edge of technology may be the separator that makes you more viable than other agents. Plus, it helps them to make better decisions from far away. Here's a sensitive topic. There are emotional barriers to home ownership, right? Especially when you have other emotional issues going on. Some veterans hesitate due to a lot of things going on in their lives: fear of commitment, uncertainty, past experiences. We, as a resource, can be that pillar, that the trusted pillar that they can lean on to provide both emotional support, information and knowledge support, emphasizing the pride and stability. And this is what a lot of people want: stability of home ownership. And don't be afraid to involve. We partner with local VFW posts, American Legion chapters, and other community organizations. And P.S., get known by them that this is what you do, that you have that expertise, and that's sincere, wanting to serve. And together we can also host workshops, seminars. Again, check our library out on the whole topic of webinars and one-to-many marketing. Events to empower veterans can be easily adapted to that platform as well.
I'd like to throw something in there real quick, Eric. You said something really profound, and that was partner with other realtors who may be in that niche. So let's say, for example, somebody in this podcast or on their 5-year real estate career says, you know what, I think veterans are fantastic, but it's a whole universe unto itself. And I'm specializing over here, either in first-time home buyers or affinity marketing or commercial real estate. There's no reason why you can't partner with other agents. They don't have to be part of your permanent organization, but I know Skip, man, he works with first-time home buyers or new construction. That's not my specialty. I'm going to bring him into a deal for his expertise. And
Sure.
Skip can talk the talk and walk the walk in that particular world. He doesn't have to be right next door to me because of technology, but you really hit the nail right on the head. We can't be all things to all people, but we should have partners, whether they're lenders, realtors, that service these different niches if we expect to be doing any business with them.
Right on. The old acronym for team. Together everyone achieves more. And so finally, one of the best moments in every realtor's life, but think about this in every veteran's life, is to celebrate the victory. When a veteran becomes a homeowner, we should celebrate that and broadcast it out there so that more veterans realize that the obstacles aren't as big as they may seem. Remember, fear is always worse, when you don't know what's going on. When you know things, it's a lot easier, and it's more than a transaction. It's a victory. It's a real victory. Home ownership is something, I know on our panelists here, we believe deeply that home ownership is right for people. And so that's why we want to share these success stories, inspire others, and continue on our mission to do that. So anyway, as we kind of bring this to a close today, I want everyone to remember that here at the 5-year career, we have a do it for you component to our programs as well. We talked about the workshops and the webinars. You don't need to do the webinars yourself. We already have the platform. We already have the infrastructure. We already have the formula on how that works. So you can leverage ours. You can contact us right here on this platform here. But the bottom line, first of all, I want to thank my 2 veteran guests here. I want to thank Patrick for your service in the Navy. I want to thank Skip for your service in the Marines. And I want to thank all of you out there that either served or supported those who served out there in the military. Thanks for the information and sharing on this topic. Obviously, it's near and dear to my heart as well. Thank you so much for joining us on the 5-Year Career Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode. And by the way, today would be a great episode to share with a lot of people out there. Let the word get out there. Let the information, you don't have to be an expert. Just share the information that you got and know that you're connected to this team. We're absolutely happy to work with you. Don't forget to subscribe down there. Rate what you hear. If you had some things to add what you have. Leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us. And so stay tuned for more exciting content in our upcoming episodes. Follow us on YouTube for some more behind the scenes. We've been promising and saying that we're going to leave some of our bloopers out there. Don't worry, it's coming, and we'll have some fun there. But remember, don't just listen. Use this information to build your own 5-year career. It doesn't take 40. You can do it in 5. Any closing comments from you gentlemen?
I have one. It's 1.1 million that you can borrow on a VA fourplex. It's really up there. And buy something if you're a veteran, because your family, as you get older, will thank you for providing them with peace, tranquility, safety. And every veteran should do the homework. When they move to a new duty station, they should immediately stop renting, which a lot of people, just every 2 years they transfer. Every 2 or 3 years they transfer and they rent. Just investigate, get the facts. Let's be a quality education source for the veteran to help them make a better decision. And that's what this podcast is all about. Educating people, helping them make better financial decisions. And I am honored as a USMC veteran to be able to offer guidance to any of my fellow Marines.
And in closing, before we pause the recording, why did the Marine smell funny when he came back from watch?
I do not know.
Because he was sleeping on duty. Thanks, everybody.